Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Before we start this, let me tell you that we have interpretation today into Bahasa, Indonesian, and French. So please click on the globe icon at the lower part of your Zoom window to select the language you're most comfortable with. I'm happy to be here today. My name is Romy Sato. I'm the Knowledge Network Coordinator at the Land Portal Foundation. And I'm welcoming you all to this webinar on how civil society actors can ensure inclusivity in their land governance work with communities. So this is being done today with a collaboration between Land Portal Foundation and both ends. And we are very happy to collaborate both organizations on this first webinar of a series, which we are calling the Whose Land, Inclusive Pathways to Land Governance. This series of webinars aims to provide a platform for stakeholders engaged in land governance to exchange on the importance of inclusivity and meaningful participation of all relevant actors in both formal and informal land governance processes. We will be holding 3 additional webinars over the course of this year. Our webinar today focuses on the role of civil society organizations in ensuring that any project, activity, or discussion related to land issues are taking place at the community and which are taking place at the community level are implemented in an inclusive, just, and participatory way. Local civil society possess a wealth of knowledge and experience on the effectiveness of specific practices, as well as their strategies, tools, and considerations that contribute to successful land justice efforts. At the same time, they are faced with diverse local conditions in which a variety of different apparent and more hidden power imbalances prevail. Our colleagues from both ends will be presenting their guidebook, Advancing Inclusive Land Governance, Successful Strategies and Practices from the Field. We will hear from Stefan Schuler about how this document came together and their experiences working with civil society organizations around the world. So this presentation will be followed by a dialogue among panelists about their experiences showcased in the guidebook. You, the audience, will have an opportunity to participate at points throughout our time together. We will seek your input early on during some poll questions. And then after the presentation and the panel, we will also spend some time taking your questions and directing them to our panelists. Before we jump into things, let me introduce you to our speakers today. So first we have Stefan Schuler, as I mentioned before, who works with partners of both ends in the Global South to foster knowledge exchange, capacity building on climate change, land governance, and sustainable development, among other issues. Then we have a great group of experts from civil society who have a wealth of experience taking inclusive land governance approach. These experts, panelists today include Nzira Judeus. She is a women's rights and LGBT activist from Mozambique and the executive director of Fórum Mulher. She has been closely involved in the World March of Women and has participated in several national and international events that discuss women's equality in Mozambique and in Africa. Then we also have Bridget Chinyeba Firi. She is the Programs Monitoring and Evaluations Manager at the Zambia Land Alliance, where she is responsible for overseeing the development, execution, and monitoring of project and program deliverables. Then we also have Don Marquez. He is the executive director of of the Asian NGO Coalition for Agrarian Reform and Rural Development, ANGOC, which is a regional network of NGOs working on rural development in 9 Asian countries and with an effective membership of around 3,000 NGOs in the region. Finally, let me introduce you to Devi Angraini. She is the president of Perempuan Aman, which is the Association of Indigenous Women of the Archipelago, and is a wing of Indigenous Peoples Alliance of the Archipelago Aman. Devi Angraini from Taluk community is an indigenous ethnicity in Sumatra Island. So this webinar is being streamed live on multiple platforms and recorded, and the video, as well as the key messages, will be available later in Land Portal's website. I'm very pleased that we have today, let me see, we have already 111 participants, so thank you very much for joining us in this discussion. And a few additional logistical notes about the webinar before we begin. Please note that the live tweeting is occurring for this event from the Land Portal Twitter account, and the hashtag we are using is hashtag Whose Land. If you have any questions, please post them using the Q&A feature that you see on your screen at the Zoom platform, but also feel free to just post them in the chat if you prefer. And with this, let me first kick off this webinar with a bit of an icebreaker. We have a couple of quick polls to get a better understanding of our participants today. So my colleague Neil will be launching these quick questions, and the first one, we would like to know your location. In which region are you based? So we're going to give a few seconds so you can take a chance to click. I hope you're all being able to click on this, and we will see now the results. So we see today that we have the majority of participants actually based in Europe and Central Asia, with 47% at the very bottom, and that I see in my screen. Next, we also have a lot of participants from Asia and the Pacific, and that's very good to know, because we are based here in Europe, but we also wanted to exactly allow participants more and more from Asia. I mean, this is why we are doing this in Europe's morning hours. And I also see 21% of participants from Africa. Thank you. Now we go to a second question. Neil, if you can please put the question here. The second one is about the sector in which you work. So which sector do you represent? So we have, if you can also click here on the option, we'll also give a few seconds here. Very good. I think with this we'll get a perspective exactly. So we have here a majority, I see 51% of participants coming from civil society and NGOs. That's great. That's also what this webinar is about, is precisely for civil society. We also have in the second place 16% of participants from international organizations. And then on the third rank, we also have universities, knowledge institutes. So to all of you, thank you very much again for joining us today. Let me now pass the word directly to Stefan with no further adu, who can present to you the guidebook. Stefan, over to you, please.
Yes, thanks. Let me quickly get on the slides. Let's hope that it works. Can you see it, Romy?
Yes, we can see it well. Thanks.
Perfect. Great. Nice that you're all joining us today. And like Romy said already, I want to quickly start the more content-related aspects of this webinar by quickly introducing a guidebook that we've been developing together with partner organizations of ours, of which many I think are participating today, and some you're also gonna hear as speakers in a minute. This guidebook is called Advancing Inclusive Land Governance, Successful Strategies and Practices from the Field. And as you can see on the screen, there's an English version available of it, but we've also translated it to Bahasa Indonesia. And both is available on our website as well as the one from the land portal. And this webinar is definitely not a sort of advertisement talk for this publication, but we nonetheless consider it important to let you know that this publication is out there, because the very idea of this document is that civil society organizations around the world are able to use this and learn from the experiences and the knowledge that partners of ours have highlighted or showcased in this publication. So I'm very glad to see that more than half of the participants are actually from civil society. And I hope that you can have a look at this document later on and see whether there's some relevant information in it for you. So to quickly introduce the background of this document, we've actually been having various skill sharing workshops together with partners of ours in Asia, but also in Africa, on issues around inclusive land governance over the last couple of years, basically before COVID. And what we realized in those skill sharing workshops was that there's a wealth of knowledge available or like existent amongst civil society actors around the world. But that there was this need to concretize this knowledge and put it also on paper, so that the concrete lessons learned prevalent in our network would actually also be available in the long term, and that also it could be shared with other civil society actors that our partners are working with. When I talk about our partners, both ends supports a lot of civil society actors around the world in all kinds of issues that they're facing. And in that publication, there have been more than 30 civil society partners, mainly from Africa and from Asia, participating. And they're from more than 10 different countries. And like I said already before, this guidebook basically comprises a collection of practices and strategies that those civil society organizations have used to basically advance inclusive land governance. And the aim is to elaborate on some of the extensive experiences and expertise that those organizations hold and that they use in their struggle for land justice, and thereby also to provide a source of inspiration and practical guidance for fellow organizations like you. It is intended to offer advice and guidance through really like examples from the field that can help local organizations and communities to formulate and pursue their own advocacy goals. And it is centered around 9 different practices or strategies. We often, we don't always know how to basically call it, but tactics that are often also interlinked that those organizations use in the field in their land governance work. And each chapter provides a sort of background on that practice or strategy, a number of concrete tools that are related to that practice/strategy, things to consider or anticipate, and also a specific case study from a local civil society organizations that we consider very relevant for that practice. And what you can see on the slides is basically just 4 of examples of those 9 strategies/practices that this publication comprises. And one is on building movements and campaigns, one is on legal empowerment and paralegal training, one is on collective natural resource management and sustainable land use planning, and another one on monitoring, guideline compliance and implementation. As you can see, they're often interlinked. I guess some of your organizations are also engaged in various of those strategies, or you're also seeing how basically a merging of those strategies can help you advance your objectives. So it's by no way meant to be a split, and there are always overlaps, of course, in between them. And this is just an example of the first chapter, which is on participatory mapping, another of those strategies or practices. And it's on the right-hand side, you can see those tools that I was mentioning. There are also some quotes from some of our partners that have actually been interviewed and have actively participated in coming up with the information that is available in that publication. And on the right-hand side, you can see there's also per practice always a list of things to consider and anticipate, because it's really not the idea that this guidebook just shows how great the work is that all of our partners are doing. Whilst I, of course, know that, that they're doing a lot of great work. It is also important to notice that they're also struggling. There are also challenges that they're encountering. And I think that is also one of the goals of our session today, to exactly discuss some of those challenges and see whether you as the audience have potentially some solutions or some advice for our partners in the struggles that they've been dealing with. And then there's also an example of a case study. This is the one by Perempuan Aman. And you're going to hear about that more in a minute from Debbie. Yes.
Can you just slow down just a little bit, the interpreter?
Sorry. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this case study, Debbie is going to talk about it in a minute. So yeah, I don't want to go into too much detail from here. I encourage would love you to all check out this publication. It's really for like-minded organizations like those in the guidebook, to learn and see how they can use some of the experiences and strategies in their respective context. It's really available on our website, like I said, in English and Bahasa. And yeah, let's hear from some of those organizations represented in the publication, what they've been doing on the ground.
Thank you, Stefan. Thank you. Thanks, Neil. We have a team of colleagues actually here on the background also supporting us. Yes, to give also this advice for speaking a bit slowly, because we also have a team of interpreters here. So again, for those who have just joined us, we have interpretation to Bahasa and also to French. And you can find those languages at the bottom lower part of your screen. If you click on the globe, you can then select the language that you are most comfortable with. So thanks again, Stefan, for this presentation. I'm pretty sure this is a very rich and useful resources for empowering civil society organizations. So let us then talk to our panelists now to know about their experiences in applying, in developing some of these strategies. I'd like to start with Nzira. And Nzira, amongst the other areas, we know that Fórum Mulher is working to secure women's inheritance rights in Mozambique. Can you talk about your efforts here in this area, and how to ensure women are included in the subject inheritance issues, which is deeply rooted in tradition and customs at the community level? Nzira, over to you, please.
Thank you, Romy. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you. Can you hear me? It's okay? Okay. Yes, Romy, thank you, especially for this invitation to join you on this reflection and this discussion. What I can say is that Fórum Mulher has been working since 1993 to promote women's rights and gender equality in Mozambique, and focus particularly on the roots of the inequalities that is under the cultural norms that in Africa, and I think in all the world, is deep and entrenched in a society. So one of the strategies that we use is to inform and raise awareness of women about their rights. Many of them do not know that they are subject of rights. They must reclaim their rights, and they need to know that to reclaim. So what we start to do was to disseminate information, raise awareness about this, and also using different tools like translation the information to local language, because our national language is Portuguese, but at the local level, the communities, majority of people use the local language. So we start to translate
I think we are.
So, and then with this campaign to yes, so women could collectively join to campaigns to reclaim the rights, because since that they understand what is happening and do a reflection, they were able to participate consciously on the agendas and the campaigns and activities to reclaim. So we start to reivindicate the participation of women in decision making process and all process of discussion, policies, laws in Mozambique, and they being the main one addressing the problems, bringing evidences of what is happening in the community, on their life, in the family, and the consequences of this for themselves and also for development of the country. So we start these campaigns, and also we create kind of technical groups composed with the different people, different expertise, social, anthropological, legal, and also activists that could do a research and could collect information and put it structured on the documents that we use to address to the parliament or to the government, all these issues. The other important thing that we've been doing is that it's not only regarding to the laws or the process of revision of the laws that we do this process. We do it continuously. Is a process that we do community learning, community raise awareness. We do feminist schools where women can engage and
Unfortunately, I see, Nzira, that your
make a reflection, analyzing the context, participation. So we gave them. Okay, maybe it's my camera. Okay, so I'm going to switch off my camera and then continue and maybe come to the end.
Yes.
So our experience is to engage women, bring women to the space of dialogue, and also do this bridge with the government and the parliament on addressing their concerns, and also make them understanding the importance to promote women's rights and gender equality. I think that I can.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Nzira. Thanks very much. Yeah, we can see it's very holistic, not your approach to inclusivity and how to deal with these issues now of women's land rights in Mozambique. Thank you very much for this. And now I'd like to turn to Bridget, who can also bring us a very specific experience that they have there in Zambia. And Bridget, I understand that the Zambia Land Alliance has done quite some work on legal empowerment of communities. Can you describe these efforts and what results have you had? I'm actually just looking if, yes, please, Bridget. Oh, Bridget, we are not hearing you, and it might be because you have to select the English just to make sure. You have to select at the bottom of your screen for the interpretation, if you can select English, then we will have the audio in English as well from you.
Hello.
Hi, Bridget.
Okay.
Well, we need you to click on the English channel so we can hear you.
I've actually clicked on it already. It's already set.
Ah, okay, good.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. So, working with land has made ZLA realize that land rights program come with a lot of land disputes, of which some require legal support. The organization has been providing free legal support to rural vulnerable communities since 2012. I have to mention here that the majority of landholders live under customary land, which makes up over 70% of the land in Zambia. So we started by training staff in case documentation, then employed actual paralegals who've been transferring basic legal knowledge to other staff members and community members through the community land advocacy committees to transfer information on legal empowerment. So other than that, what we did is that through the clerks who are like our community land advocacy committees, these are a structure that has been formulated in the community to help out with our work. So they are like the link between the Zambia Land Alliance and the communities. So these clerks support case documentation and conflict resolution when these cases come up, because the clerks are in the community themselves. So these cases, when they come up, the community members in the clerks document the cases and forward these to the trained paralegals. The clerks are also able to follow up cases in traditional courts and document grievances from landholders. So when the paralegals pick up these cases, they give mediation. They give mediation services. They also help in facilitating linkages, because the way our laws are in Zambia is that the paralegals that we have right now cannot stand before the courts of law, and Zambia Land Alliance can't afford a lawyer. So we need to work with the existing linkages that we work with to follow up the cases. We've also been training traditional leaders on record keeping, case conflict resolution, and gender. I think these trainings have helped to change patriarchal mindsets by reducing the bias of judgments towards men who are predominantly owners of land, unfortunately, because of the cultural setup of our country. So even with the improved record keeping, the referencing of documents in case there's an appeal is easy because of the record keeping that has been enhanced in the traditional leaders. So after training these communities, we've also noticed that they do claim their land rights. They're able to defend through the paralegal settings or other conflict resolution points that are existing in the traditional setup. We've also been helping community members that are faced with large-scale land acquisitions. These have been displaced. So I think I'd mentioned that we don't have lawyers, so we link them up to organizations such as SAUC or International Lawyers Project, and they kind of help them into helping out with the litigation cases.
Thank you.
These, okay.
Bridget, let me just allow to, just so we can time this appropriately, so we can give also the floor to a few other panelists that we have here now. I would like to now ask Dawn from NGOC. I know that NGOC has had a lot of success, Dawn, on campaigning about land rights. But how have you defined what are the negotiables and non-negotiables in dealing with governments? And what has the impact of these decisions been on interactions with policymakers?
Thank you, Romy. Can you hear me? Is my audio good? Okay.
Yes,
okay.
Thank you.
Again, let me take this opportunity to thank both ends and Land Portal Foundation for this webinar, for me to share the work and lessons of my organization, the Asian NGO Coalition for Agrarian Reform and Rural Development, or ANGOC. Founded in 1979, ANGOC is a regional association of national and regional networks of civil society organizations working on agrarian reform, sustainable agriculture, participatory governance, and rural development. Our mission is to advocate and promote land and resource rights, smallholder agriculture, and human rights and civic participation by serving as a platform for civil society organizations in the Asian region to generate knowledge, share tools, and conduct constructive policy dialogues. In relation to land rights, it might be worth noting that a number of global trends that are impacting on land rights advocacy. First, decisions are increasingly externalized and more complex by faceless, absent corporations with no direct systems of accountability to the communities. Second, while new opportunities are provided by the advancement of information technologies, disinformation and proliferation of fake news blur the issue at hand. Third, the roles of the state has been decreasing due to the increasing privatization and globalization. These trends are exacerbated by increasing pressures on land driven by global markets, and land is increasingly treated as mere commodity, neglecting its multifunctionality in the realm of social, cultural, and environment. On this note, advocacy can be better understood by classifying its activities into two kinds. First is the upstream advocacy, which pertains to the initiatives made to publicize issues that need to be addressed. This is the high visibility part of advocacy. Meanwhile, downstream advocacy involves building consensus and forging alliances and networks, lobbying, and attending meetings. It is said that the downstream advocacy is the harder kind, since it is easy to agree on what to oppose, but it is difficult to agree on what to propose. And thus, it is important that the goal of a land rights campaign be clear from the start, in order to define the negotiables and non-negotiables items in our demands. Among the pitfalls in land rights advocacy that civil society organizations should avoid are addressing an issue that is too big or too complicated to handle, or not knowing what the people really want, and not having any concrete demands or alternative proposals, and having too many mixed messages. Instead, land advocates should ask ourselves the following questions before embarking on our campaigns. Is the issue based on the felt needs of the poor? Does the issue have a clear constituency? Do we have a counter proposal or an alternative? Have we identified the right targets for our advocacy? Do we know exactly what results we want? Are these achievable? Do we have a high chance of winning what we want? What are and can we afford the risk involved? And finally, can we sustain our efforts?
Thank you.
Once these items are clear, then it will facilitate the process of building consensus and determining and prioritizing the objectives and success indicators of our demands. Over to you, Romy.
Thank you very much, Don. Yeah, these are very interesting insights as well. And I can see also a bit the link also with what Bridget was saying, really asking the questions, what are the real needs? Now, I think Bridget was bringing this experience of the paralegals, which I think were very important. And now you break that issues into very interesting questions also that civil society can ask themselves. Let me turn now to Devi. Devi, can you tell us about how participatory mapping of indigenous land has empowered indigenous women in Indonesia? Devi will be talking to us in Bahasa. Thanks, Devi.
Oke, terima kasih Romy, dan saya menggunakan kesempatan ini juga untuk berterima kasih pada Both Ends dan Land Portal karena bisa memberikan kontribusi di dalam proses ini. Sebelum saya menjawab bagaimana itu memberdayakan perempuan, ada catatan saya sebenarnya di Perempuan Aman soal situasi di Indonesia. Pertama, tidak ada kebijakan yang memenuhi dan melindungi hak-hak masyarakat adat, dan patriarki dan feodalisme masih sangat dalam di negara ini. Jadi ini menjadi tantangan. Ketika masyarakat adat tidak diakui, perempuan adat pasti tidak akan pernah terlihat. Wajah kami tidak pernah kelihatan, Sebagai angka kami tidak pernah dihitung, sehingga menjadi sangat penting bagi perempuan aman untuk bisa mendorong visibilitas perempuan adat, dan kami menggunakan engendering participatory mapping sebagai satu alat untuk bisa mengkonsolidasikan perempuan adat dan mendorong visibilitas. Nah, EPM sendiri digunakan sebenarnya untuk menjadi alat menguatkan kapasitas perempuan adat. Jadi pendokumentasian yang dilakukan di dalam wilayah adat dilakukan langsung oleh perempuan adat. Mereka mengidentifikasi pengetahuan apa saja yang ada di dalam wilayah adatnya, siapa yang mempraktekkannya, apakah ada perubahan dari waktu ke waktu. Kami menggunakan 3 generasi untuk melihat perubahan itu, sehingga sebetulnya EPM mampu menyediakan data terpilah, dan terutama memang kami menggunakan untuk mendorong perspektif dan kepentingan perempuan adat menjadi kuat di dalam membicarakan wilayah adatnya. Jadi wilayah adat bukanlah hanya didominasi oleh satu kelompok tertentu, gitu. Di dalam proses ini juga sebetulnya data-data yang dihadirkan melalui EPM itu menjadi alat komunikasi yang sekaligus sebenarnya membuat perempuan-perempuan adat ketika menuliskan data-data ini melakukan refleksi pada situasi yang dihadapi dari waktu ke waktu. Dari proses ini sebenarnya perempuan adat mengidentifikasi persoalan-persoalan apa saja yang akan dihadapi atau yang sudah dihadapi, resiliensi seperti apa yang dibangun antar generasi ini, menyikapi perubahan-perubahan yang terjadi di wilayah adatnya, dan kemudian di akhir proses itu sebenarnya perempuan adat akan mengenali resiko-resiko apa yang akan dihadapi ke depan, dan kemudian perempuan adat mencoba merumuskan peta jalan seperti apa untuk melakukan perubahan dan menghadapi situasi ini. Nah, proses ini sebetulnya menjadi sangat krusial karena kemudian dibutuhkan satu kemampuan yang menuntut perempuan adat bisa mengartikulasikannya di dalam ruang publik. Data yang kuat berdasarkan pengalaman yang dimiliki oleh perempuan adat dan proses-proses yang digunakan melalui engendering participatory mapping kemudian memberikan kepercayaan diri dan membangun argumentasi berdasarkan data yang kemudian sulit dibantah oleh banyak pihak. Dari proses itulah sebenarnya kepemimpinan perempuan adat melalui EPM ini bisa dibangun. Jadi data bisa didorong untuk masuk dan dirujuk oleh para pihak. Menurut saya ini adalah proses yang kemudian kami lihat sebagai proses pemberdayaan perempuan adat melalui satu alat yang kami sebut engendering participatory mapping. Saya kembalikan Romi.
Thank you. Thank you, Devi. And I think you touched upon very interesting issue for us to move to our second rounds of questions, data. What kind of data is important for civil society to better act in their instances at the community level? What kind of data is important to promote inclusivity? So with this, let me turn back to Nzira in Mozambique. And Nzira, the question is, what kind of data information is essential to guide efforts to secure women's land rights in Mozambique? Does this data exist? And if not, what is preventing this data from becoming available?
I think that we have information, but it's not structured, it's not organized as the way we can have easily access, and we can use it for planning and for other projects that we want to implement. There's still a challenge to disaggregate the data by gender, and also to access it when it is done, because government is doing all effort to document it, but the way the government do it is not so participatory, not participative, and women feel most of the time that they've been put aside. It's like the government doing the mapping, trying to collect information, but using their own methodology that is not so inclusive. Women at community level, they are the ones that manage the space for agriculture, for ritual space, and also for bush when they take products, they take plants for medicine, for health practice. And when comes this institution to mapping where are the land, which land are being using or not, and who is doing what, most of the time they just focus to talk with men and not engage women on this process. And sometimes when they want to implement projects, women are the ones that say, this area you can't do that because it's an area that we normally use for our ritual or our tradition, and it's coming a challenge for between community and the authorities. So we've been asking government to disaggregate, and the effort is being doing, but it's far for the level we want to have information. One of the practice that we do is documenting the stories of women and learn and hear them about what is the space they use, how they use the space, and what are the practices they've been applying at community level, how they divide the roles. And with this information, women feel that they've been heard and they're participating, because they are talking about even the ancestors, how the process of distribution of the land and the space happened. So this also makes us understanding very well the importance of land for them and how they want to be engaged on the process, and see government organizing the process. So what we've been doing is also to address these issues to the government and make them understanding that it's important to include women and listing them, all the groups of women on this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nzira. Yes, I see also this parallel now with what Devi was saying previously, that it's really this process of mapping, and in your case, the process of talking to the women, that it creates also this empowerment, because it's about the land is not just about an asset. It's not just a commodity, to refer to the words of Dawn previously, but it is really the territory, where a lot of other values are embedded in this space. So, and I think it is really very much now through the process that there is this empowerment. And now, also going back to the experience of the legal support by Zambia Land Alliance, Bridget, I want to bring you back here in this round, and would like to ask you, what kind of legal support have you found is most needed, and what factors have proven most crucial in helping to protect the legal rights of communities? Please.
Thank you very much, Romy. So ZLA is currently using paralegals who unfortunately cannot represent clients in court, and accredited lawyers in the country are quite few and are expensive to hire for long-term cases. Some of these cases that need litigation include high-profile cases such as displacement by large-scale land acquisitions, which have become rampant under customary land. I think I'd mentioned that it's got the biggest chunk of land in the country, and that's where the vulnerable communities reside. So these investors have funds to, finance lawyers backing their cases, and they stand a better chance of winning cases. So I think the biggest need that we might have is litigation support. Otherwise, if we have to look at the factors that are crucial in helping to protect the legal rights of community members, I think increasing the knowledge of land administrators on the importance of protecting the rights of the community members is very key, because this will enhance their willingness to actually protect these rights. There is also the need for provision of independent conflict resolution points, such as the paralegal desk that we've been able to create across the communities we're working with. We also need to work with the traditional leaders, because they are the the custodian of land under customary land, so we can't sideline them in the conflict resolution system. Then we should also ensure that we use provisions in the legislation to actually defend the rights of the community members. We should also work with like-minded organizations, such as the ones that offer litigation cases. Then we also need to engage in non-confrontational methods of engagement. I think this has helped ZLA in ensuring that even as we try and help out with the communities, there's no bad blood around the cases that we're dealing with. Thank you. Over to you, Ron.
Thank you, Bridget. Thank you very much. Very interesting insights as well. It's very interesting to see how it is important now to support paralegals because of all these structural barriers also for communities to even defend themselves. Let me now take you all to Asia and get Dawn here to reply to us. Dawn, can you describe how the Landwatch Asia campaign uses data collection and reporting in a participatory manner? How do you use the data and share it publicly?
Okay, just a brief background on Landwatch Asia. It was initiated in 2007 by ANGOC. So it's a regional campaign geared toward ensuring that issues of access to land, agrarian reform, and equitable and sustainable development in rural areas are addressed both at the national and regional development agenda. It aims to contribute to existing campaigns in Bangladesh, Cambodia, India, Indonesia, Kyrgyzstan, Nepal, and the Philippines by identifying the context, challenges, and opportunities of access to land and agrarian reform campaigns at regional and national levels. One of the major strategies is the use of evidence-based Landwatch Asia campaigns on land rights, recognition, and tenure reforms. A key feature of this approach is participatory action research, where members of Landwatch Asia discuss and approve the framework or design of the studies. Thereafter, primary and secondary data are used by representatives of partner communities and civil society organizations for joint analysis in formulating inclusive land policies or improving program implementation. In effect, the consultation process leads to building consensus among the participants. A challenge that we have been facing, though, in this time of pandemic is that the process of data gathering, either through focus discussions or key informant interviews, is basically conducted through online given health protocols. As you know, many of the rural communities in Asia have limited or have poor internet connection. Community representatives as well as civil society organization workers have to adjust, learn, and be patient on using the online platforms. Once the draft studies are validated by the communities and civil society organizations, in-country multi-stakeholder dialogue is undertaken to present and discuss the major findings and recommendations to government representatives. A regional summary is then prepared to identify the common areas while noting the various country contexts. This regional draft summary will undergo a peer review by the country focal points of Landwatch Asia, which then again contributes to the process of consensus building, as well as increasing the capacity and research, increasing the capacities of policy and research of civil society organizations, as well as setting the advocacy priority targets at the regional level. The end product is a publication which we disseminate in printed form during face-to-face meetings. We upload the electronic files as well as in our website and encourage our partners to do the same in their respective websites and to share with various media organizations. We have to reach out those outside our circles, otherwise we'll be preaching to the converted. Finally, a key challenge is producing infographics, particularly for a regional publication given the length of its of the studies. Over to you, Romy.
Thank you very much, Don.
Romy, you muted yourself accidentally.
Sorry. Thank you, Don. I just wanted to say, yeah, I see it's a very complex process, not to ensure inclusivity, but we see it's also a very important and necessary process. There are no shortcuts for this. Thanks for that. Let me now turn to Devi. So we are still in Asia here, and Devi, what are the challenges that the women you worked with face in the process of mapping their lands? Can you elaborate a little bit on this challenge, please?
Baik, begini Romi, kalau di Indonesia itu pembicaraan mengenai tanah ini sangat politis ya, baik dalam konteks negara maupun di dalam komunitas sendiri. Jadi seringkali kelompok perempuan adat itu distigma atau diberikan label bahwa dia tidak capable, dia tidak memiliki informasi dan pengetahuan yang cukup, sehingga perempuan adat kemudian dieksklusi dari seluruh pembicaraan mengenai wilayah adat itu. Dan ini di dalam komunitasnya. Tapi secara struktural, kebijakan dan praktek-praktek yang dilakukan oleh negara yang menempatkan misalnya kepala keluarga adalah laki-laki, membuat perempuan adat kemudian tidak bisa mendaftarkan tanah yang bahkan adalah hak waris yang dia terima dari keluarganya. Ini situasi yang dihadapi ya, dan sangat tidak mudah ketika perempuan membicarakan aset dari komunitasnya, terutama juga di dalam keluarga. Nah, ini satu hal yang menjadi tantangan cukup besar kami hadapi, dan kemudian juga tidak mudah bagi perempuan adat untuk keluar dan bekerja di luar ranah domestiknya. Jadi seringkali perempuan kemudian diletakkan pada konteks ranah domestik yang penjelasannya itu selalu menyempitkan pengertian mengenai ranah domestik perempuan adat. Ranah domestik itu tidak hanya dapur, menyediakan makanan, menyediakan sandang atau baju, bukan. Tetapi ranah domestik perempuan adat itu adalah seluas wilayah adatnya, ada hutan, sungai, air, dan seterusnya, gitu ya. Yang sebenarnya menjadi ruang-ruang yang sangat politis, kekuatan yang sangat besar, yang jika digunakan oleh perempuan adat itu akan bisa mendorong perubahan. Nah, ini yang sebenarnya kita dorong melalui proses-proses di engineering participatory mapping. Jadi mereka mengenali kekuatan ini dengan pengertian yang cukup. Data dari Perempuan Aman, kami melakukan satu riset ya untuk lembar fakta dan analisis mengenai implementasi tujuan pembangunan berkelanjutan atau SDGs di Indonesia. Di situ menunjukkan bahwa 90% proyek-proyek pembangunan itu tidak pernah melakukan free prior informed consent dengan perempuan. Dari situasi itu kita tahu bahwa memang perempuan adat dijauhkan dari seluruh proses-proses yang berbicara mengenai wilayah adat, terutama mengenai tanah gitu. Walaupun masih ada keluarga-keluarga matrilineal yang kemudian pembicaraan mengenai aset keluarganya masih dapat dilakukan dan dikontrol penuh oleh perempuan adat. Ini situasi yang ada, tapi masih sudah sangat sedikit kelompok-kelompok yang seperti ini. Tapi realitasnya pada umumnya tantangan yang kita dapatkan adalah yang seperti tadi saya sampaikan. Saya kembalikan ke Romi.
Thank you, Devi. Wow, 90% of projects with Indigenous do not have free and prior informed consents. That's quite an alarming figure, according to the assessment that you have done. Let's keep us in mind. Let me get you all now to our third round of questions and the last one. And I will ask you all panelists to be rather brief so we can allow enough time also to get the questions from our audience. I will start now with Nzira. And Nzira, I understand that the Fórum Mulher works with women victims of the conflict in Cabo Delgado province in Mozambique. Many have lost their husbands in the violent conflict, and they have fled their lands. We know that this is a very specific conflict there, and it's a very important situation that it's being faced by many over there. And we would like to understand a little bit, if you can give us the background to it, and also understand in these circumstances, what measures can civil society advocate to ensure women's rights and their well-being? Over to you, Nzira.
Okay, Romy, this is a very sensitive topic to talk, because we even do not know what's going on in Cabo Delgado. It's like we hear that there are groups that are attacking communities, attacking family, burning homes and burning farms, and we don't know what they want and who are them. Till 2 years ago, even our government wasn't share enough information to all country. Yes, this conflict is causing a lot of stress and also trauma for the people, particularly to women that is suffering several abuses, sexual discrimination, sexual violence, discrimination, and also being executed by these groups or by the military army forces in Mozambique. We don't know. So it's very complicated. What we've been trying to do is support women that are in the new resettlement, because many of them running from their community and try to find safe space that is in Pemba City. They were running from their original zones to this the capital of Cabo Delgado. When we reach them, we try to understand what's going on and what they want to share with us. And they have this hope to go back to home, to return back, and they are asking continually, why are we being attacking and why are we suffering this? So we start to give a primarily basic support to them, giving a fabric that is capulana in Portuguese. That is this traditional fabric that I'm wearing, because it's very important in our culture to use this. We use as a cloth. We use to sleep. We use to carry babies, to go to church. So we have different ways to use this. So we try to give some. We start a solidarity campaign to give them to women. We start to campaign also to collect some main basic equipment that they use at kitchen, because they're still the ones that are responsible to cook and organize food. For the groups that were able to find a farm in the community they arrived at, because it was not easy also to have a place to continue to practice the agriculture. We tried to give them some seeds and some support with equipment also to continue to do a farm, because when they ran, they left behind all the production and everything that they had. We also start to organize some sessions to relief of trauma and the challenge. Some of the women lost daughters. Till now, it's counting that 600 women and girls that disappeared, and no one said, well, where are them? Because even the terrorists, they say terrorists, they didn't say, they didn't inform us where are these people. Women are organizing themselves to take care of the others and also to reorganize in the place they are. We know that I'm talking about women because they are majority in terms of percentage, in terms of numbers that are displaced. So they represent 80% of people running away from this community of women. So they are doing health service. They are supporting the others that are pregnant. They also organize themselves as to denounce sexual abuse and violence that they are suffering from the groups that are coming to support them, or even in the place that they are individuals that start to bring this cause. But mainly, or what we also do is to address the government and the president of Mozambique about the conflict and asking him to to bring peace, because everybody's looking as how our president try to find out what's going on. So
thank you.
It's not easy to talk about capital Gado, because there are many issues around the social, political, and also mainly regarding to the women body in the context of armed conflict and with terrorist attacks.
Thank you for sharing this with us, and Zira. Absolutely, I understand it's a very sensitive conflict. I felt it was also important to share, because we know that there are such conflicts happening in other parts of the world as well. You know? So, and we see that there is, of course, no silver bullet to address this. But I think it's also important to see how your organization and others are using multiple strategies now to at least provide some relief and some well-being for those who have needed to be evicted from these lands, to need to leave these lands. Let me turn now to Bridget and talking a bit again about the experience with the community land advocacy committees set up by Zambia Land Alliance. Bridget, can you tell us a bit more about the impact of these CLACs, as is the acronym of these committees, and so the impact of those in representing the interests of vulnerable groups, and how they hold customary leaders and government officials to account. Very challenging issue, I can imagine. Please, Bridget.
Yeah, so in every community we go to implement activities, we make sure that we establish a community land advocacy committee that is responsible for implementation of activities at community levels. So this structure is chosen by the community itself, and it has got 10 members who are gender balanced. They offer their services on a voluntary basis. So we have noticed working with these structures, which are like a sustainability structure for us in whatever community we're going into. We have noticed the enhancement of women's land rights, I think basically because there are women in the structure, so they're able to advance any women-related issues towards the traditional leaders. We've also noticed a quicker resolution of cases, because these clerks help in following up cases and helping organizing witnesses for case resolution. We've also seen the clerks helping in the documentation of land rights. They help in the verification of boundaries, as well as ownership of the land that is going to be certified. We've also seen an increased enhancement of community-led advocacy efforts. And when the advocacy efforts is led by the community, we see that there is ownership and celebration of results. So the clerks also help out to gather evidence. When they gather evidence, they present community position papers to duty bearers, such as the traditional leaders and the local authorities. They also help with following up on actions in those position papers. They have the capacity to engage with traditional leaders to discuss the recommendations that are in the position papers. But most importantly, they've also been our watchdogs at Zambia Land Alliance, because they're able to report abuses to us as an organization, and we follow up on those abuses, and we help the community in supporting them in ensuring that the interests of the community members are in those recommendations that we put across. Over to you, Romy.
Thank you, Bridget. Yeah, very interesting also this connection of having those people also being your arms, not in an extension of Zambia Land Alliance in the communities, and reporting, and the role in reporting abuse. I will take you now back to Asia with Dawn and Devi. And first to Dawn. Dawn, I understand that you have developed a standard set of indicators against which civil society partners assess land laws in their respective countries for Land Watch Asia. How do you use these indicators, and are they useful for tracking progress? If you can keep it very short, so we can go to Devi and then get some questions from the audience. Thank you.
Yeah, Landwatch Asia developed a monitoring framework in order to inform us of our joint policy agenda. We are monitoring tenure and access to land. For land tenure, the indicators involve disputes, evictions, and land conflicts. On the other hand, 4 indicators are identified for access to land. They include distribution or concentration of land ownership, landlessness, land policies, and budgetary support to such policies. The monitoring framework assumes that strengthening land tenure and access to land leads to food security and poverty reduction. The opposite direction, landlessness, leads to conflicts and violence. Let me quickly share 2 initiatives and how we use this in our monitoring. First is the Land Conflict Monitoring Initiative. As we know that land conflict is an indicator and it raises questions about the state of land governance. Land conflicts result in loss of livelihoods, violation of human rights, and should therefore signal an urgency for governments and other stakeholders to react. Thus, in 2018, Landwatch Asia developed a land conflict monitoring report to understand the nature and causes of land conflicts, the impacts to local communities and land defenders. We improved the methodology in 2020 to allow us to consolidate data at the regional level. Thus, from January to December 2020, Landwatch Asia partners gathered at least 1,371 cases of land and resource conflicts in 6 countries, covering about 6.47 million hectares, which is the total land area of Sri Lanka, and affecting 2.37 million households. The main drivers of these land conflicts are private investments and government projects. There were 712 individual victims of violence and human rights violations in the 5 countries, including Bangladesh, Cambodia, Indonesia, Nepal, and the Philippines. The second example is our monitoring on the Sustainable Development Goals. Using the data on indicators that Landwatch Asia developed, the campaign produced the 2020 CSO report on SDG 1.4 to bring focus and attention to the land agenda, which has not been prominently addressed in recent SDG reporting processes of governments. Covering 7 countries, the report has identified potential gaps on reporting of land under the SDGs, and also gauges the progress made by governments toward addressing land rights under SDG 1.4. Not only through the lens of official data and global indicators, but also studies and feedback from CSOs and rural communities. All the 7 reports revealed that SDGs have been incorporated in medium and long-term plans of government. However, national statistical offices are still currently in the process of developing and further refining the methodologies and measuring SDG 1.42. Further, none of the countries collect or report perception data on tenure rights as stipulated under SDG 1.2. This is an important matter in view of the fact that having some legal rights does not automatically guarantee security of tenure if people perceive that their legitimate tenure rights are not adequately protected.
Thank you,
We'll type in the chat box the links of these 2 reports, and over to you, Romy.
Thank you. I was going to ask you exactly that. If you can paste on the chat here the links to these reports and also where people can find this data, because I can see it can be very helpful for a lot of civil society groups also to have insight into this data and use this data. Devi, now to you in Sumatra, we would like to hear how you have used the data resulting from this participatory mapping, which is your experience there. And how have you been able to use data for advocacy or other purposes? And also, what are your future plans? Very shortly, please.
Romi, saya akan menjelaskan mulai dari bagaimana data ini digunakan mulai dari kampung ya. Data EPM ini kemudian menjadi baseline bagi komunitas, terutama bagi perempuan adat untuk melihat potensi yang ada di wilayah adatnya. Dan data ini data terpilah berdasarkan kelompok umur, berdasarkan kepemilikan lahan, dan seterusnya. Jadi data ini sangat detail bahkan sampai data pengetahuan. Data-data ini yang kemudian digunakan oleh perempuan adat untuk menyusun visi ke depan mengenai kampung yang dibayangkan. Dan digunakan untuk melakukan intervensi, perencanaan pembangunan, dan budgeting di tingkat desa. Jadi desa adalah administrasinya pemerintah. Nah ini dari sisi kampung, dan kemudian di kampung juga ada 2 wilayah pengorganisasian perempuan aman, local chapter perempuan aman di Sumatera Utara, mendapatkan surat pengakuan kampung adat dari kepala desa. Jadi lagi-lagi ini desa administrasi pemerintah. Satu di Menteng Tualang Pusu, yang kedua adalah di Saintis. Dua-duanya di Sumatera Utara. Ini menjadi sangat penting karena secara historis tidak pernah perempuan bisa menyampaikan suaranya, dan kemudian setelah 30 tahun mereka diperjuangkan pengakuan kampung adat, baru kali ini bisa berhasil, dan itu di tangan perempuan adat. Jadi ini satu kebanggaan buat kami. Dan kemudian di Pasir, Kalimantan Timur, data EPM ini digunakan untuk 2 usulan hutan adat dan mengurus pengakuan masyarakat adat kepada pemerintah kabupaten. Dari proses ini kemudian Pasir menjadi salah satu nominasi untuk Equator Prize tahun 2021 untuk usulan hutan adat. 2 usulan hutan adat ini, satu di kaki gunung, satu lagi di mangrove dengan hutan yang sangat primer. Nah, yang di level regional dan internasional, kami menggunakan data-data ini untuk melakukan advokasi. Saya perempuan aman mengikuti betul bagaimana advokasi SDGs dilakukan. Data-data ini kami kontribusikan pada advokasi itu. Tetapi yang paling menarik adalah data ini kemudian kami gunakan untuk mendorong Komite CEDAW memberikan rekomendasi kuat kepada pemerintah Indonesia untuk memberikan pengakuan masyarakat adat dan kemudian memastikan pemenuhan hak perempuan adat melalui proses ini. Pada periode 80, concluding observation Komite CEDAW kemudian secara eksplisit menyebutkan.
Thank you very much for this, and I hope exactly that this work will continue now, because I can see that there are also a lot to be done still in taking this even to scale to other communities as well. Without further ado, let us take some questions from our audience. Thank you very much for all of those who have been with us until this point, and for listening and for your patience. Now let me turn to the very first question here that we have. And Neil is a colleague who's helping me on the background to select some of these questions. The first one I got from Wilson Kipkazi. The question is, how do we simplify donor support to Indigenous peoples to get support to build their capacity, to protect their territorial lands, and for their sustainability? Who would like to answer this question? So it's about how to simplify the donor support to Indigenous communities. Devi, maybe can you answer this first question, and then we see also if others would like to answer.
Kalau di Perempuan Aman, kami bekerja dengan sangat konkret, jadi melihat dan mengenali dulu wilayah adat, dan kemudian karena saya bekerja dengan perempuan adat, tentunya saya mengenali ruang-ruang utama di mana peran-peran perempuan adat memang sangat kuat di dalam ruang itu. Dan ruang inilah yang kita perkaya datanya, kita tampilkan dan kita highlight kepada publik, sehingga sebenarnya visibilitas dari perempuan adat itu kemudian muncul secara kuat. Proses-proses ini menurut saya karena dekat sekali dengan wilayah adat, konkret, itu menjadi lebih mudah dipahami oleh publik bahwa peran-peran perempuan di dalam pengelolaan sumber daya alam itu bukanlah kontribusi. Perempuan adalah aktor kunci di dalam proses-proses pengelolaan sumber daya alam yang menurut saya Ketika kita mengabaikan datanya, itu artinya kita sedang mengabaikan keberlanjutan. Itu saja, Romi, kalau saya meresponnya. Terima kasih.
Thank you. Thank you, Devi. I just wanted to, I got also a note here from Stefan that indeed we are going to also have another webinar. Please subscribe to Land Portals and both ends newsletters, because then you will get information about when precisely these other webinars will take place in a year. I will actually just jump directly to then the second question. And we have here a comment from Chris Tanner. So once again, I find myself in a webinar that is not addressing the main question just raised by Nathaniel, by Don and Angok. States and corporations are simply ignoring the agendas and concerns of all our organizations. I admire and support all the initiatives being discussed here, but what more can we do? So Chris believes that more direct activism and protest appears to him as the only way now. Don, would you like to comment on this, please?
Yeah. Thanks for the question, and I understand the frustration. We've been raising these issues for decades, and it seems that nothing is happening. But on the other hand, there are progress happening. The fact that governments and corporations are also involved in the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, I think, is a step forward for different stakeholders, the private sector, states, and civil society and communities to really sit down and find ways to address these concerns related to the violation of human rights by business groups. Of course, the question is the implementation of these guidelines. So therefore, I think that's the important role of civil society organization to continue our watchdog role as a monitor, but at the same time also build more consensus within the civil society, as I mentioned from the start, on the demands that we want to a particular company, for example. We also have to learn, I think, the language of business. For them, it's really more of economics. So therefore, how do we convert the discussion in terms of how tenure security can make more business sense for them, because it reduces conflicts, it addresses environmental degradation. So therefore, we have to sort of learn the language of how to convert environment, peace into economic terms also, that we can also discuss with the private sector.
Thank you.
It's not that easy.
Thank you, Don. I also would like to pass this to Nzira to comment on this question. Please, Nzira.
It's true, the question that Chris raised. It seems that we movements, we are now stepping back and we were quiet, but it's also time for us to reflect on our methodologies, to do our interventions. Time to reorganize, also time to learn from these new events, new ways of doing things, because we stuck in our own ways to do, but we are not learning. So we need to reinvent ourselves. The other thing I think that's important is to bring the youth to these movements, to this process, because they are the future. But it seems that there's a very big gap between the activists that are coming from old school and the youth. They are just doing their own stuff and not engaging on these campaigns and this movement. So it's time to bring them. So I believe if we start to do that, we can continue. There are things that we cannot stop doing, the capacity building, raise awareness, and engage the communities, because most of the time we see that some donors, say, okay, we already did it. We cannot continue doing the same things. It's not true. We need to do it.
I see that Nizira has a problem with her audio right now. Okay, Nizira. Sorry, you broke up a little bit, but I hope it's. Thank you again, Nizira. I will now.
We need to give capacity enough. No, it's important to maintain. Yep. I was almost finishing. I was just bringing this add-on capacity building strength to the community for them to raise their voice and their demand, they claim for their rights.
Thank you for these ideas, and also I think the call to involve the youth. I think this is also a very important point. I do see a lot of organizations are starting to work on that line, but I can also see as you said, the old school NGOs not yet adopting such approaches. Now we have a question now to Bridget specifically. Bridget, the question is, what about the risks of civil society organizations in creating parallel land recognition systems, which are going beyond national legislative frameworks, which results in alienation by national and local authorities and unachievable expectations for communities, I think, which are now the results in terms of alienation. Well, let's focus on this very first part then. Bridget, please.
All right. So I think I'd mentioned from the beginning that we mainly work in traditional settings. And in our traditional settings, I think we have the main structure, which is the traditional courts. But when we work with the traditional courts, we make sure that we introduce both the paralegals and the clerks to this structure so that there's no conflict. And I think even in our mediation, we've noticed that actually the traditional leaders themselves call on the paralegals or the clerks to come and help them with the mediation of cases. So I don't think we have created a parallel structure. I think for us, it's just an independent place where aggrieved parties can come through to get legal advice before they channel their energies towards the traditional courts. But if we work with the state land, we usually work with the state courts. And again, that's not a parallel structure because those are really set up. But as I mentioned, much of the litigation cases are undertaken by our partners who have the manpower to actually handle the cases. And I think it has really worked because most of the time the community members do not have the legal knowledge to actually represent themselves in courts of law. So when the litigation support organization comes through, it means that they have an expert before them. And we've seen, I think I should think almost 3 cases that have been resolved in favor of the community members because they had the presence of a litigation support NGO standing up for them. So I think it does work.
Thank you, Bridget. Thank you very much. I have a last question. We are just 5 minutes before the end, and I have these last questions to Nzira, and a question coming from Technopova. My question is to Nzira from Mozambique. Does culture play a negative role on access and ownership of land to women? If so, which strategies do you use to bring transparency and accountability between men and women? Very interesting question. Nzira.
Very interesting, yes. I'm going to switch my camera to facilitate communication. Yes, some culture, can bring a negative impact to women access and control to land. we know that culture is being used by the patriarchal system to cover to defend this predominance that this right men to control all the resources and economic assets. So yes, so but it was not always like that. It is written that in the past, women used to have the same access to land and control also of the land, but it changed with the times and it's come like that. So what we need to do is continue to educate our society in terms of human rights. In Mozambique, for instance, our constitutions are saying that men and women have the same rights. So we need to continue to address that, change norms, change attitudes, change behavior on the community, and try to stop this tendency of reproduce these inequalities that we see in the culture. So all of us are calling to be the change we want to see, because it's not just for the others, or even us as individuals. We need to reflect on our practice, and some men have to accept to lose some privileges that have been having due all these times. Yeah.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you very much, Ndizira. So we are just 2 minutes before the end, and with this, I actually would like to already close here to thank everyone for having listened. Thank you a lot to our panelists here today, to this great discussion, to Stefan for presenting also the guidebook. You will also receive a link to the guidebook in an email to all of you by tomorrow. Also, I would like to remind you, please help us to make these webinars better and better also for the next time. Take the survey, please, that Neil, my colleague, will post here before you leave. It's a quick survey to know what can be improved and what has been well done. Remember that this is a series of webinars. So we will also have another free webinars taking place in the course of this year. One of them being focused on the role of donors. And you can know more about these webinars when they are taking place through our websites of Land Portal and Both Ends, or you can also sign up to our newsletters. With this, exactly, thank you very much to all of you. I'm sorry that we couldn't take all the questions, but we will have a short debrief with panelists right after this, and we will give them the questions that you have sent them, and perhaps they also can get in touch directly with you to answer some of these questions. Thank you very much again for this very interesting discussion, and I hope to see you the next time in this webinar series.